We live in a world moving faster than we were built for. And somewhere in that acceleration, something essential about growing up quietly disappeared. When I first encountered The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, something in me paused. Because the world he describes felt deeply familiar. A generation surrounded by smartphones and social media, facing a rising youth mental health crisis, while many of us are only beginning to understand why. I'll admit, when I picked up this book, I expected a familiar message. Another warning about screen time addiction. Another call to simply put the phone down. But what Jonathan Haidt delivers is something far more thoughtful and far more unsettling. What surprised me most was the depth of the evidence. Haidt isn't relying on nostalgia or intuition. He's drawing from years of psychological research and global data on youth mental health. And when he lays out the timeline, something striking appears. Around 2012, the moment smartphones became nearly universal among teenagers, rates of loneliness and depression in teens began to rise dramatically. The pattern is difficult to ignore. Across multiple countries, the same trend emerges. Anxiety increases. Depression increases. Self-harm increases. And suddenly, what once felt like isolated struggles begins to look like a generational shift. What this book explores is deceptively simple, but incredibly important. Why is the Gen Z mental health crisis happening? And what role have smartphones and social media played in shaping it? Haidt argues that the real transformation wasn't simply technological, it was developmental. Over the course of just a few years, childhood shifted from something rooted in exploration and independence, a play-based childhood, to something increasingly dominated by screens and constant digital interaction. And that shift changed far more than how kids spend their time. It reshaped how they develop resilience, identity, and connection. I began the book skeptical, but as the evidence unfolded, I found my perspective slowly shifting. By the time I finished, I felt like I understood a generational puzzle that had been hiding in plain sight. At the heart of the book is a powerful idea. We may have unintentionally conducted a massive social experiment on an entire generation of children. By introducing smartphones and social media into young lives before their brains were ready, we didn't just add entertainment. We replaced the experiences childhood has always depended on. One concept that deeply stayed with me is anti-fragility. The idea that some systems grow stronger through stress and challenge. Children need manageable risk. They need to fall off the bike, argue with friends, and learn how to recover. Those moments aren't failures of childhood. They're the training ground for resilience. And yet, over the past few decades, many of those experiences quietly disappeared. Out of understandable concern, adults began protecting children more carefully in the physical world. Playgrounds became safer. Parents supervised more closely. Kids spent less time exploring independently. At first glance, that sounds like progress. But something unexpected happened alongside it. While the real world became increasingly protected, the digital world became almost completely unguarded. The same 10-year-old who isn't allowed to walk to school alone may still have unrestricted access to the entire internet. Haidt calls this the Great Inversion. Children are overprotected in the real world and underprotected online. And once you notice it, it's difficult to unsee. The book also explores how social media affects girls and boys differently. For girls, platforms built around constant comparison can amplify anxiety and self-consciousness. When life becomes a stream of curated images and feedback, identity begins to feel like a performance. For boys, the challenges often appear through gaming addiction and unprecedented access to online pornography. What impressed me most is that Haidt avoids moral panic. He isn't condemning technology outright. Instead, he examines how timing and scale matter. Yet what stayed with me most is the hope he leaves readers with. Because after diagnosing the problem, he points towards solutions rooted in community. Rebuilding shared spaces, creating phone-free schools, giving children back unstructured time to explore the real world. Reading The Anxious Generation left me with something unexpected. Not despair, but clarity. Because once you understand how a problem formed, you begin to see the path towards solving it. And perhaps the most powerful idea in the book is this. This isn't a failure of individual families. It's a collective challenge created by rapid technological change. And collective challenges can be solved when societies decide to move together. The generation we worry about today is still young. The story isn't finished yet. And if the ideas in this book begin shaping how we think about childhood, how schools structure learning, and how communities create spaces for connection, then the anxious generation may also become the generation that teaches us how to rebuild a healthier relationship with technology. If this resonated with you, like and subscribe for more book breakdowns and mindset insights here at Well Read Club.